Welcome everybody to this masterclass, and we're really looking forward to spending the next just under 4 hours, no, 3 hours, sorry, together with you to walk you through the circular readiness assessment that we're built under the Ready to Loop project. We're going to tell you more about Ready to Loop later on this afternoon, and for now, focus on what I think you're interested in is actually what is circular readiness, or readiness for transitioning to the circular economy. How does it look for my company, and how can I start to measure how ready we are to make the transition to circular economy? So that's our agenda for the afternoon at a high level. By way of introduction, my name is Tim McAloon, and I'm a professor here at DTU, working on a number of projects in circular economy and sustainability. And together with Daniela Bigoso, who is hiding behind my camera, maybe you can turn your camera on, or my camera on. Daniela is called Tim at the moment. She's sat down there in the corner. She's when one of us isn't presenting, we're the tech help desk. That's how we're doing it today. And Daniela is associate professor, also within the area of sustainability and circular economy. And together we've been working on this project, which is now called Ready to Loop, for the last 4 years actually. And we've got some news for you later about how the project is indeed expanding to a number of different areas of not just manufacturing companies, but the value chain, the whole value chain. Let me just pause there for a second and ask, is the sound okay here? It is? Everyone's nodding and putting thumbs up, great. Because I'm talking into the speaker, which is on the table over there. Yeah, so Torstein found the yellow thumbs up, or the thumbs up icon. Let's use that this afternoon as well to give each other a sign. It's really great to see lots of people there, and it's great to see the beautiful room of Epla, which we're missing. We've been there recently. It's nice to see you all there in Iceland, and it's nice to see you in KTH in Stockholm as well, all together. And then all of the rest of you in Finland, in Norway, and all of the other online guests who either are sitting here pretending to be just online, they're actually online, or sitting in some room being online, or actually at home or somewhere else, they can't be here today. This is one of the great things we've learned over the last 2 years, is how to be together even though we're not physically necessarily together. Daniela and I were supposed to be in Helsinki today, and that's why Linda's looking very, very calm, but I think we've put her on the spot. She likes to be very orderly and prepared and have a whole professional setup ready. And at the last minute, we were going to be traveling for 2 reasons. One is another project. We had a workshop, and then also this workshop that we're going to be holding together with you in Finland. And on Friday afternoon, the one workshop was cancelled, and another meeting as well. And we couldn't justify at the end of the day traveling over. So I'm sorry for you in Helsinki. We're really looking forward to seeing you. We'll come another time. And sorry, Linda, for pouncing ourselves on you at the last minute for this workshop physically. But we're all here together, and that's the nice part of that. So our agenda for this afternoon in a bit more details is we're going to give you the world's shortest introduction to circular economy. It's 1 slide. We get that, or we gather that you're here because you know what circular economy is and you're motivated to make the transition to circular economy. So we're just going to put what we're going to be working on together this afternoon, and the project which has been working towards creating this platform you're going to be using into that context. We're going to introduce the Ready to Loop platform to you, and we're going to show you the readiness assessment across 8 dimensions. After that, it's your turn, when we've introduced it to you, to start the workshop proper, and for you to carry out a readiness assessment for yourself and your company. Now, as you saw in the invite, the workshop and the masterclass is really for the for manufacturing companies or companies with some form of product development process through to manufactured products. And we know that some of you are not, but you're still welcome. And you're still welcome. There will be some parts of the platform that you will not be able to access, and that's because we'll explain that as we go along. But we have some benchmarking facilities so that manufacturing companies can benchmark themselves against each other, and also because what we're interested in, Daniela and I and our research team behind the project, is on the one hand giving you tools and methods to help you to see where exactly to focus to transition to a circular economy. And on the other hand, we're interested in seeing and actually how is it going in the industry. And for that reason, we're collecting data. We're collecting data anonymously for all of the companies, and all of the input data we get is anonymized straight away. And it makes us, gives us the ability or the possibility to see how is circular economy readiness in the electronics industry in Denmark, or how is circular economy readiness in terms of business model transformation in the forestry industry in Finland, and so forth. And for that reason, all of those who are not manufacturing companies are classed as out of scope, but you can use all of the tools and all of the processes, just not the benchmarking. So when we get to that part of the workshop, we'll show those of you who are not in scope organizations what the benchmarking looks like, and I hope that will be sufficient. So during the workshop, that's your chance to do assessment for your company, your organization. Also, if you're not a manufacturing company or a company that is in scope, we have an example for you. And some of you who have been working with us on the CATALY project before know the toothbrush. We're using that again as an example, an electronic toothbrush, and we use that to imagine we were a company in that field. Then, when we get the results from your readiness assessments, we'll start to look at the strengths and the gaps, and have you in breakout discussions discuss what the strengths and the gaps are for your particular organization, if you'd like to share them. There's no real big secrets in there. And we can also tell you that companies that have been storming ahead with many different cases and pilot projects aren't necessarily super ready to transition to circular economy. And this is what we're trying to do, is trying to tie up ambition with actual readiness. So having a share out in the plenum discussion there is what we'd like to do. And then after that, towards the end, we'd like to talk about next steps in your transition towards a more ready stance for carrying out circular economy activities. And then we're going to tell a little bit more about the Ready to Do project and how we're planning that over the next 4 years, in fact. It says Q&A at the end, but of course, you're welcome to ask questions at any time whatsoever. Post them in the chat if we're talking, or raise your hand, and then somebody, either Linda or Daniela and I, will look out on the chat and the raised hands, and we'll just stop. It should be a discussion and a dialogue, and not a monologue from our side. So yeah, and then in the meantime, if any of you are still having issues in logging on to the Ready to Do platform, then just write in the chat a direct message to me. Not Tim and Daniela, it's where it says where I'm talking now, but where Daniela is sitting at the moment, we're going to be swapping seats. Just write a direct message in the chat there, and whoever of us is not talking will help you, will become the tech desk person. We're relatively good at multitasking. And then to end the day, Linda is going to put this masterclass in the context of the CATALY project in general, and tell what the other opportunities are within the CATALY project. Does that sound like a way to spend 3 hours together?
Yes.
Seems so. Good. We'll have some breaks along the way as well. Stefan thinks it's a good idea. Thank you, Stefan. Great. Super. So this, as I promised, is the world's shortest lecture on circular economy. What we have today is mainly linear economy. We have a so-called take, make, use, dispose model. We've been operating that very effectively over the last 150 years. In fact, more than that, since we industrialized the world, we've mastered the art of digging minerals out of the ground and making them into stuff, and at the end of their lives, discarding them. And even more so over the last 30, 40 years, we've become very, very good at especially the end of life part of it, as our disposable income has increased, and as we've commoditized many of the products and systems we use in the world. We simply have afforded ourselves to make actually a big problem for ourselves, but also the next generations to come. So that's the linear economy. So you can already hear now that that's something we need to move away from. And what we're trying to move towards is, of course, the circular economy. And the circular economy is the idea of circulating is not simply taking the waste and making it into new products again, but it's also avoiding waste in the first instance, and it's also seeing other ways in which we can reduce our impact, avoid the impact, reduce the impact, and then remove it altogether. And if we do have any forms of waste, how do we treat those as well as we can in terms of choosing the right options in a prioritized manner, so we don't just incinerate as we do in this country, or landfill as we do in the country where I was born. You can guess where that is, either by the accent or by where they landfill lots of stuff, or other ways of disposal. We need to see what are the options before we get to the last resorts of incineration or landfill or so forth. Even if we're taking heat and energy, electrical energy out of incineration processes, that's better than other options, but it's worse than other options again. So the circular economy is an area which has enormous focus, especially in the European region. Danielle and I have just started a course in January this year, together with the Technical University of Munich, on circular economy, and we had a guest speaker from the European Commission, and he said it beautifully about what is the motivation for us in Europe to be so aggressive about this agenda towards circular economy. And he said, well, it was quite simple. We, after a number of analyses and a number of different investigations about the potential of circular economy, and you should see down here, there's one of them which comes from McKinsey and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation, but also as an input to the European Commission, that there is 1.8 trillion euros potential per year of new income if we were to transition to a circular economy. So, and this and many other studies that they did within the European Commission, they basically concluded that, well, in the next 10 to 15 years, the world is out of necessity going to transition to a circular way of functioning. Even if we don't believe in resource depletion, if we don't believe in climate change and so forth, out of pure necessity, we will be transitioning to a circular way of working, living, and doing business. And he said, and our choice within the European Commission was, do we want to be ahead of that curve, or do we want to be behind it? And we decided in 2015 that we want to be ahead of that curve. And since then, you can see the massive amounts of investment from the European Commission side in the circular economy. So there's business in here as well. And we shouldn't be ashamed of the fact that there is a business opportunity in the circular economy. I mean, it's called circular economy, right? So the economy part is a big part of the definition. But the idea is, how do we actually treat the things that we make, the things that we produce, the materials that we transform into value-added products and services? How do we retain those as long as possible and get as much value out of them for as long as possible? So that's basically the day's lecture on circular economy closed. Any questions? No, doesn't seem so. Then we move on. And you knew that, of course, and that's why you're here today. And the idea is that we can be very emboldened about the idea of transiting to circular economy. We can be very excited about the idea, and we see very many companies being excited about that. But what actually happens when we start to try it inside our own company? Well, we see some companies doing really great pilot projects, other companies managing to put more focus on their end-of-life activities or take-back activities, or start to take back the product at the end of life, or look at tracking and tracing to see how we can maintain products which are out in the market in our customers in new ways, and so on and so forth. But what we saw at the beginning of the project which created this platform, and our motivation for doing this project, was that this seems to be extremely ad hoc, and it seems to be very unorganized. And in fact, our main hypothesis, you could say, going into this project was that if you don't organize this understanding of where you are as an organization from a readiness perspective, then the chances are that failure is going to be more likely than if you are aware and you go into organize. So what we've basically done here is to make this platform that you see in front of you, we'll call it the diamond or the hexagon or whatever you would like to call it, which is depicted on the screen here, which has a number of dimensions. And what it basically is doing is, number one, it's showing what your strengths and opportunities are for circular economy transition. And that's by you doing a self-assessment of your own company's readiness. But not just yourself as one person, but actually all of your colleagues. As many colleagues as possible should go in and by invite by yourself and actually make a readiness assessment in terms of your circular economy readiness. The reason I asked before if somebody had a Gmail address is that we don't allow Gmail, Hotmail, MyMail, me.com or anything, because we're using the company email as an identifier. So everybody within your company you can invite to carry out a readiness assessment, and as long as they have the same ending mail address, then they're part of your company. And you can invite within the platform as many as possible. And the idea is to get as many people as possible within the same company to carry out this assessment, because the more responses we have, the more reliable the data can become. And of course, you may say, well, we're just a startup with 2 people. Well, get both people to do it, then that's okay. But for large organizations, often the viewpoints are different about the readiness. And we're seeing that the data are more reliable the smaller the company, somehow not surprisingly. But the reason for it having the possibility for many people from the same company to put their data in there is exactly to ensure that we have the reliability of the data. Once we've done that, we can see our strengths, where we're actually ready just now, which on this picture on the screen here are all the green areas. You can see this example, it's only an example, and you can see this, and it's only one person I can see who has actually filled it in on this example. But if it was true, they'd be very ready, because they've got lots of green areas on the picture. And then the opportunities or the weaknesses, you could say, are the gray areas. You get a readiness profile, and that readiness profile is basically telling you what your current profile is and giving recommendations for how to actually make a change in your readiness profile to improve your readiness. Then you can, if you're a company and in scope, as I mentioned before, you can benchmark your results both internally. So if you're a company with a number of business units or departments, you can set up different readinesses and compare them internally. But also you can do external benchmarking against other companies. How do we do that and respect confidentiality? We do that if there's, as long as there's companies that have the same criteria as your company, and there's more than 5 of them, we will allow it to benchmark, but under 5 we will not do. For example, if you were to say, I want to single out, you can filter the benchmark. I'd like to look at large companies in Denmark making children's toys. It'd be relatively obvious who possibly will be on the platform there, and therefore, and there's not 5 large companies making children's toys in Denmark, for example. So we wouldn't allow the benchmarking unless you have the right scope. But if you were to say children's toys manufacturers in the whole world, maybe we have more than 5 companies there, and then you can benchmark it. We'll tell you a little bit about the data in a second. And then we help you to kick off a transition to be, so one thing is to say, how ready are we today? And another is to say, well, and what to do to make ourselves more ready going forward. What do we actually do to start the transition? And then we help to start the transition process, and more about that later. In terms of who we have on board just now, we have over 500 companies on the platform, manufacturing companies. So we've been running this project for the last 4 years, and so the platform, we always talk about the project and the platform. The platform now has over 500 companies on board. They're spanning 16 different manufacturing sectors, and actually from 38 countries. The project that we're talking about today is actually, it's a Danish-funded project for Danish companies. Nevertheless, 37 other countries have somehow found their way to the platform, either with our help, when we've been traveling and doing different workshops, or mostly by themselves. So the data set is actually very rich just now. And the nice thing is that we can start to, when we do the benchmark, we can really show you some very nice, interesting aspects of the data that you can really see a reliable benchmark. We spent the last 4 years building that data population up. What does it mean to transition, and what are we trying to do there? So you saw on the screen before there was the little diamond or the hexagon, and now it's over onto the left-hand side under A. The first thing we do is to understand our readiness. So it's by going in and doing a readiness assessment of how ready are we today to make the transition. That's where you get the green and the gray, showing the strengths and the opportunities. After that, when you see the strengths and the gaps, we're looking at how do we explore which of those opportunities actually to action on and to move next with. So this is where the strengths and the gaps come in, and the benchmarking starts to enact. After that, we help to define the direction by showing improvement opportunities in your processes with examples and with often a consultant to help you along the way. Then we propose that you develop an initiative to actually focus on. We call it a transition path sometimes, and that gives you the recommendations. And then the final step is to make an evaluation and plan for implementation of this transition path. So to help with the roadmap and an evaluation of your actual readiness to get going and to communicate it inside the organization. So today we're going to focus on the first step only, which is the understanding the readiness. And we hope that it will whet your appetites to go to the other steps here, the B, C, D, and E. We can talk about how you can do that later. But today, this is our focus. So I'm going to leave you after this next slide by encouraging you to either sign in or create a profile. And now I'm looking at all your faces in front of me. Does anybody have any issues in signing in? Anybody not have a profile just now? Then raise your hand or turn your microphone on or do something. It seems that everybody's there. Daniela, did you manage to solve everybody's problems? Wonderful. Great. Then let's move on. I'm going to hand over to Daniela now to take us on to actually how do we go and take the next steps to starting the readiness assessment.
Right. So now it comes to the point that we start to make the assessments. And as Ting mentioned before, if you work for a manufacturing company, then take your company as the boundary object for answering the assessment. If you don't, then Oral-B is a great company to work for. They do have this electronic toothbrush that you can buy in Copenhagen airport for 150 krona. It lasts for a travel, maybe no longer than that. And it's with batteries that you can replace. So just keep that in mind in case you need a company to work on and you are not from a manufacturing company. Now, let's get into the platform. At the time that you are logged in, you can probably see a screen like that. And all you need to do there is to click on My Readiness to start with. My Readiness will take you to a page where you can select either the entire company as the scope for doing the assessment, or select one specific business unit that you can create. And now if you are working at Oral-B, you can just go for the whole company. Otherwise, you can either decide for your company to go to the whole company as well, or to create a new business unit for you to make the assessment. It is as simple as clicking create new business unit, adding the name for it, and then you will be there in the assessment for that given business unit. Then let's start the assessment. And what you are going to see when you click start the assessment is this diamond, as Tim just mentioned before. And why is that important? We know that when companies are making this transition to a circular economy, they need to look into several different business processes. Up until today, many companies still believe that circular economy equals recycling. Recycling is for sure an important element of circular economy, but is by far not the only one. And when we look into companies, it's really important to understand what needs to change in the organization to make this transition. So in here, we have, through scientific-based research, identified what are the 8 key dimensions for making this transition to circularity. It starts with understanding our business model and strategy. So how do we create value, and how do we deliver value to our customers? And how can we try to decouple value creation from resource consumption? Maybe we don't need to keep selling more and more products, but we can actually get revenues on the basis of the use of those products, for example. Then we also look into product and service innovation. If we are changing our business models, or if we want our products to last longer, we need to change the way we are designing those products. So to design for extended lifetime, for instance. Then we also need to look into manufacturing and value chain. How are we producing our products? But also, how do we engage with different stakeholders in the value chain? Then we have technology and data down here. I guess there are 2 very big revolutions going on in the world today. One is circular economy, the other one is digitalization. And when we bring the 2 of them together, we can really boost the potential of both. So understanding how to use data to further develop our circular propositions. Then we have the use, support, and maintenance. And the idea here is to understand how can we keep our products running for as long as we possibly can. Again, to deliver the function with lower environmental footprint. But there will be a time that the products don't work anymore. And then we need to take them back and to understand what to do with them. And that's what happened with this dimension over here. So it's about take back and understanding if it's better for us to remanufacture, to recondition, to simply reuse, or to go for recycling. That again is one of the areas within circular economy. Then we have a dimension number 7 here in the middle. That's the organization. Understanding what is the business case for making this transition, having the right skills and knowledge internally in the company. I think that we've never seen as today so many demand for sustainability professionals all over the place. And this circular economy is for sure also driving this change into companies. And then we have a dimension number 8 in here that is actually an encompassing dimension through all of the different diamonds, and that's about policy and market. Market needs to be ready to acquire our circular products, but also policy needs to be there. And there are up until today lots of barriers for circular economy initiatives, and it's important to understand how to do it. So those are the 8 dimensions that any manufacturing company needs to consider when making this transition to a circular economy. And before we start clicking the dimensions and answering the questions for your companies, I just want to go through the readiness scale with you. So basically what we're going to do is that inside each one of those 8 dimensions, we have a number of different questions. And for all of the questions, we have one single scale for you to provide the answers of the readiness of your company. It is a 5-point scale that started on not started or not ready at all, when the company has not started to implement that given area or are still trying to understand what are the potentials for doing so. Then at a level 2, we understand the potential is there, and we are in the moment trying to understand how to pilot that so that we can learn and see what it really means for my company in my context. One step forward is to actually start piloting those initiatives and getting the pilots out there, try it out, see what happens, get data from it, and on the basis of that, take a decision. Should we move forward or should we stop? If we decide to move forward, then we will hopefully go to the phase 4, that is to plan the scale up. So how can we go from this very one single pilot that proved the concept to me to actually scale up in the entire market? And then finally, scaling up initiatives or having them already fully implemented into your company. We've been in the World Circular Economy Forum in Finland a couple of years ago, just before Corona, and they were saying at the time that there was far too many pilot projects that never turn into scale up. And I guess that we are still in that phase, try to understand how to turn good ideas and good potential into reality. And what we see with the data, and we're going to show that to you later today, is that more and more companies are moving ahead in that scale, which is quite exciting to see and also to be part of. But let me pause for a second. Do you have any questions before we move forward and start with the first dimension for the assessment?
I have a question.
Yeah.
You said we could use a case if we are not a production company.
Yeah, if you're
when I registered, I just put the company name. Is there anything else I should do to use a case company, because we are advisors, not a production company?
Yeah, Stefan, you can use the case of a toothbrush manufacturer, maybe Oral-B. Have that in mind, and answer the readiness assessment with that in mind. And then later on at the end of the workshop, you can either reset your data or ask us to reset the data. If you're an advisor, then it's more for you to get a feeling of how the tool functions. And and it's nice to have a concrete case. Otherwise, you'll just be clicking around without really having a frame for that. But for the sake of today, if you're not a company that actually has a product or a product development process and a manufacturing product, then you can choose to use the case. And then later on, we'll help you to close the data, and then you can start it again later.
Okay, so I just have it in mind, sort of.
Exactly.
Okay, great. Thanks. Thanks a lot.
Any other questions? So let's then just get started. Are you ready?
Yes.
Great. So let's go to the first dimension, that's strategy and business model innovation. The way it's going to happen is that we're going to give you a case from a company as an inspiration that is implementing that given dimension. And then we're going to give you time to answer the questions that we have in there. Okay, so let's start with the first case example here. And this is Share Now. I guess they are in the 5 Nordic countries. They are one of the biggest car sharing systems in Europe today. It started between BMW and Sixt as Drive Now, and over time it expanded to also cover other manufacturing. What they are doing here is to completely change the logic of their business. Those companies, they were used to sell cars and sell more and more cars. But they saw a need for a change in the market where people started to be much more interested in having access to those cars instead of owning the cars. If you look today, in state of the art in Europe, cars are parked for 95% of the time. 3% of the time, we are looking for parking, and we are actually moving from A to B for 2% of the time. So from a circular economy point of view, it makes so much sense to provide the same functionality of moving from A to B for more people using the capacity of the cars that would be otherwise parked waiting for the next traveler. But what's interesting here is that in order to be able to implement this new business model, they had to create a service around it. They had to integrate with the app so that you can open the cars just by pressing not even a button, the screen in your mobile phone. They also have the infrastructure and the partnerships in the city so that you can have places to park the car. And they also created some incentives in here. One really important part of this system is that the cars need to be charged when you need them. So if you are a drive now or a share now driver, you know that you get some extra 3 minutes if you park the car and you plug it in so that you ensure that it's always 100% full in or charged. Okay, that's an example. I think we all experienced that. Now it's your turn. If you click in the dimensions, you're going to see we have 5 questions in there. And for each one of the questions, you can click the I button to read more about what it is about if you need. Or you can answer in this relation to the 5-scale readiness assessment that I mentioned to you. Or you can also say, I don't know, or that's not relevant for my company. It's always a possibility for every user to have those 7 different answers. And if you want to add some comments to your answer, then you can also click on the small post-it and add some comments in there. So this first dimension usually takes longer. We are learning how the system works. Take your time, and as soon as you finish, if you could just raise your hands in Zoom so that we know you are done, and then we can move forward to the next dimension. Okay.
But we're not going out in breakout rooms now?
No, we just stay here together.
Yeah.
It should take no more than 5 minutes, I would say.
Anybody has any tech problems? I'll try and be the tech guy.
Well, I have a question.
Yes.
I tried to fill it in this morning.
Yeah.
Just a bit random clicking to experience the platform.
Yeah.
But now I cannot get back to the
You should be able to get back to it.
You need to update your assessment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm not sure whether you heard if Martin was getting ahead of the class this morning and practicing, and there's a way of going back into the platform and updating if you'd like to do that, if you've already done that yourselves. You basically go to My Loop, My Readiness, and then instead of Start Assessment, you go to Update Assessment. Fortunately, we thought about that.
And I mean, it always changes over time, your readiness, right? So the idea is that you can also update to see the evolution over time. just remember to raise your hands in Zoom when you are done so that we can keep track and have a good speed for everybody. So usually when we do those workshops within one single company, it's really interesting because we have people from marketing, from strategy, from product development, from manufacturing, all together in a room. And then we discuss the answers as we go. And it's really interesting because sometimes people come up with initiatives they have that their colleagues had no idea about whatsoever. It becomes a really interesting exercise for change management in the companies as well. So we'd really recommend you to maybe replicate this workshop with your colleagues later on, so that the more answers we get, the better the results are going to be. There's no one person that knows everything about what's going on in terms of circularity. So usually it's a good idea to engage different colleagues. I can see that have raised your hands.
We are a little bit behind here. We were expecting to go in our room to do this partly in Icelandic, although we see the text in English. So there are some people still waiting for the emails to sign up. Do I understand correctly? We're not going to go into the breakout rooms.
We're going to go later on to discuss the results, but not for doing the assessments.
Okay.
I can see that
So
somebody does not get an
we
email.
should raise hand when we are done.
Yes, please. Yeah. Who is not receiving an email? I can see that somebody, LKT has told me that somebody's not getting an email.
Okay, so now we have about 2/3 of you done. Let's just wait 1 more minute and then we can move to the next dimension. And while the ones that have finished are waiting, just try to think about other companies that are a good example implementing those different areas in terms of circularity. Another fun fact, usually when we work with companies, they of course have initial interests about where to focus on in terms of circular economy. And strategy and business model innovation is by far the area that most of the companies want to start working with. They see that circularity has the potential to really change their business. And they want to do it by having a very clear strategy. So to avoid that circularity just become part of their brand, but also part of what they do. And also they are really interested in understanding how circularity can change their business model towards enhanced competitiveness, but also minimize costs. And that's usually where many of the companies want to start. But it's not necessarily the right place to start. So that's also why we do this assessment first, to understand what are these trends and what are the gaps. Okay. I think we can move now to the.
Just need to make a new password.
Just waiting a few more seconds before we move to the next dimension. Well, then another fun fact. When we started the platform, the users that we got mostly were sustainability professionals. They were by far the most represented type of user in the platform in the first year or two. Over time, what we see that is really interesting is the expansion of types of users joining the platform, from only sustainability professionals to R&D professionals, to product development, to strategy people, to manufacturing and supply chain, and so forth, which is really interesting. It's showing that circularity is going beyond only the sustainability people. It's really getting to being part of their business. So we see that as a really positive transition in terms of the interest of different people joining forces, but also why it becomes even more important to bring in those different competencies when understanding how circular we are, but also how to give the next step and where to focus on. So that's really, really interesting to see. Good. Let's go then to the next presentation.
Yeah, so Reinhilde, I've just sent you a direct email, so you should receive that by now with a temporary password. And then if all of the rest of you can lower your hands again now, we can use that as a marker for next time as well. So the next dimension that would lead you on to, and by the way, when you're filling in the readiness assessment here, you can do it in any order you like, of course. You don't have to do it in the order we're running you through. This is a logical flow that we're taking you through, but you can attack it from any direction. You can go for organization first, or the policy and market, or what have you. But we'll just take you through this flow. It gives more logical sense to do it this way. So basically, when we're looking at readiness of product and service innovation, what we're doing here is to measure your capabilities to be able to develop any sorts of new solutions which are designing the product or the system that you are creating in your company to be more ready for circularity. So that could be both products and services. And it could have been the car that Daniela showed in the Share Now example before. It could be the product that you're manufacturing in your companies that you're about to make in your startup, or that the companies that you're advising, if you're consultants, are actually working on and producing themselves. So, and again, just to bring you an example of a company which actually has been working on providing, or not providing, but developing their own competencies in terms of readiness from a product and service development perspective. This is actually a Finnish example. So big thumbs up to the Finns, a company called Repack. And Repack basically has made a whole new business out of reusable packaging for e-commerce. In the last 2 years, what was the increase, Daniela, over the last 2 years of the packaging for?
It was 72%.
72% increase over COVID has been e-commerce, so people getting things sent to their home of packaging. And Repack set themselves to tackle that really big issue of packaging and have this reusable packaging product and a whole business model, in fact, where the business would only function if the product was designed for circularity. So here you see a not so beautiful looking, if beauty is about pure and clean and completely new, but beautiful is in the eye of the beholder, right? So it's beautiful, it's being reused again and again. And the packaging here is used up to 30 times for 30 different customers. Is the average that they're looking for. And what they basically did was to see how do we make ourselves ready in terms of being able to design the products for the packaging, but also design the products to go into so-called product service systems, which is being able to extend the amount of valuable time that the product is being used. So back to the example Daniela showed before about the Share Now, It's totally crazy that our vehicles are standing for 95% of their time not being used. How do we get them to be more usable and more used? We put different technology into them. So it could be something as simple as this repack example, but it could be any type of a strategy towards making our products and services more designed for circularity. So if you click on the icon that's on the top left here on this picture, of course on your hexagon, you'll get 4 questions around how ready is your organization to transition to circularity from a product and service innovation perspective. And again, when you've finished, put your thumbs up.
Can you show the questions, the dimension on the screen?
Yes, we can do that. Give me a second. Don't worry about the answers here. This is a dummy example that Daniela's filled in, but here's the questions.
You can see the pattern here.
Or maybe just the PowerPoint last slide where you have this screenshot.
We don't have those ones in PowerPoint, Said. It was only the first one for an example.
Do you see them on the screen?
Yes, yes.
What I'm showing you here actually is an example where we have a company with lots of business units. It's a dummy company, it's called DTU. But it's, we actually have some companies which have 5 or 6 business units. Oh, excuse me. I'm just going to make a new business unit here. So those of you, if I can, there we go, start assessment. I'm going to make a new business unit. Catalyst business unit. Again. Not doing very well at this one. I'm a mouse person. Yeah.
Would you like me to
It's
do it?
okay. It's okay. Yes, there's entertainment. There we go. There. I'll just take this one. We have a look. There we go. They say don't work with live animals or technology. Doing experiments, it always goes wrong.
We have about 1/3 of us that are finished already. Good.
while those of you are still completing, the others are waiting. Try and find some fun facts as Daniel did so nicely. When we go later into the toolbox and show you the tools we have in there, we actually have quite a lot of tools and methods which help us to indeed focus on exactly this area of product development. So how do we actually develop our products and services to be more circular ready? So we can see later on how they're organized and how they're filtered as well. We have over 100 tools in the platform just now, and 100 tools is probably worse than having 3, unless you start to filter on, because where to start, right? So we'll show you later on where the tools belong and how to filter on them, and how you can actually start to use those to enhance your readiness. So the 16 of us have raised hands. Is there any more last ones who'd like to have their readiness to continue?
Great. And there's no one single company that can make the transition to a circular economy alone. Some of them have tried and have very quickly realized it's not really possible. You need to make partnerships and rely with your value chain, both upstream and also downstream. But also manufacturing is really important. How do we make our production processes more circular as well? And here we have an example that it's a Danish example for now. And this is the green fiber bottle. That's a project we've been working together in collaboration with Carlsberg and Paboco, the paper bottle company, to develop a beer bottle that is made out of paper material. The idea here was that at the end of life, the bottle would biodegrade if needed. So if by any reason the bottle ends up in nature, that it would be possible to biodegrade without any damage to the environment. But the first plan was still, of course, to recycle the bottle and keep that in the return system. I might be saying, why is she talking about the bottle design if we are in the manufacturing and value chain dimension? And the reason is, for being able to put this bottle in the market, they had to completely redesign their manufacturing process, from aluminum coming in to cans getting out to paper coming in and paper bottles coming out. It had to change all of the processes they were going through, but also the suppliers. They had to establish a completely new value chain to be able to bring the paper pulp and manufacture those bottles. Over time, what happened is also interesting from a value chain collaboration point of view. What Paboco did was actually to reach out to other companies in the beverage sector or in sectors where they're using lots of single-use packaging to also adopt this solution. So today they have a consortium with Carlsberg, of course, but also Coca-Cola, Absolut, Vodka, and also L'Oreal with the cosmetic products. So it's really growing over time with the idea of having a plan B, a biodegradable packaging in case it end up in nature. Now it's time for you to answer the questions for your company. So just click into that dimension and you are going to find, if I'm not wrong, 4 questions again for manufacturing and yeah, I was Brenda. And when you finish again, just remember to raise your hands so that we can follow you. You might be thinking, I've never seen that bottle in the market. Is that out there already? Not yet. It's still in the final development stages, but we hope to really be able to see it in the supermarkets very soon. And not only in the Nordic countries, but also in countries in the world where we don't have such an effective take-back system as we do. See, some of you are starting to raise your hands, then it's time to start the fun facts again. Actually, our role in this project was to do a life cycle assessment of the bottle to ensure that circular is also more sustainable. And this is something that is extremely important for any company doing this transition to circular economy, is not to consider that circularity equals sustainability. Sometimes it actually goes on the other direction, and more circular solutions are less sustainable solutions. So it's really important for us to keep critical about it, to see circularity as a way of achieving sustainability, but also understand there might be trade-offs, and there might be cases in which it's not more sustainable to go circular, right? I can see there's a question in the chat. What was the name of the bottle company working with Carlsberg? Their name is Paboco. I will write that in the chat for you. Yeah, Tim just did. And it stands for Paper Bottle Company. It's another interesting example because it's actually a small company here in Denmark. They started with this idea of developing paper-based bottles. They managed to sell the idea to Carlsberg at a first instance, and then they went together to the Innovation Fund Denmark for a project. And then on the basis of that, they expanded their name. Before they just changed their name. It was EcoExpect before. So it's a good example of how small companies and startups can actually change very well-established businesses towards enhanced circularity and sustainability as well. And we see that happening over and over and over again as well. And maybe time for one more fun fact before we move forward. Actually, what we see from the data is that the smaller companies are actually the ones with the highest readiness for circular economy. If we compare the data that we have from those 500 plus companies in Ready to Look, we see a very actually significant difference between them. And we can maybe discuss that in the breakout rooms later on. Why are SMEs usually more ready for circularity than bigger companies. But save the question to our discussion later. Okay, should we start moving to the next dimension?
Yes, let's do that. I just realized I posted the name just to Daniela. I've just posted it to all of you.
Well, that's why I saw it.
I'm
I
sorry.
was also wondering.
I'm getting old. My eyesight's going. My tech savviness is going. There we go. So on to the next dimension. And now we're basically moving on to the bottom of the hexagon, which is technology and data. So the questions that we're asking here about how ready is your company in terms of actually building in capabilities so that you can create value not just through the product, but also throughout the life of the product through data that you can collect. And to be able to do that, of course, you need to have a data strategy. You need to have sensory technology. You need to have a way of collecting it. You need to have acceptance of collecting it. And you need to be able to be ready to deal with the data once you get it in from the users. And we have an example here for that, which is called Eon ID. I think it's Norwegian, if not Swedish. I don't remember. And basically, they're making smart textiles. And imagine having your T-shirt with a chip in it, an RFID chip or another type of an active chip. The idea here is to have this global system for textile recycling, and also to be able to know what types of textiles are in there, because depending on the mix, we can actually retain a higher value of the textiles if we have the similar mix of textiles there. So this is an example of smart clothing systems. And there's other companies going even further to having RFID recognition systems for counting the amount of times that certain textile has been washed, to have sharing wardrobes and all sorts of different types of systems here. This is maybe a slightly different and stranger example. If we look at the amount of data that we can have in different types of tech products, all the way from heavy industry products to like cranes that you have that some Finnish companies are manufacturing, over to systems which are counting the amount of fish caught and filleted on board a ship or on board a fishing boat in Iceland, all the way over to other systems of counting numbers of production activities, to see where we can understand the data to increase and enhance the value add throughout the life cycle of the product or the system. So when you click on this one, you'll have an interesting surprise. There's only 2 questions on this, so this should take you less than the 5 minutes, which means I need to find less fun facts to fill the time in. But again, put up your hands when you're completed with this one. And this is the bottom one down here about technology and data. To raise your hands when you're completed. You're going to get a fun fact anyway. So, the fun fact behind this one is it's actually not just behind this particular dimension, but behind all of them. So the way in which we actually created the questions here is actually a science-based approach we took. We did a full systematic literature review of all of the different aspects and dimensions that we could see as being interesting in helping companies within the manufacturing
industry to transition to circular economy. So this was what went before all of these questions you're going through now. It was a very, very detailed review of hundreds and hundreds of articles, scientific articles, filtering them down to a number of potential, what we're calling aspects. The questions we call aspects, and the way we've clustered them together, we're calling the dimensions, the diamonds we're clicking on just now. We tested those with internal experts within our community, with other academic experts, and then within, I think it was 4 workshops with industry practitioners. It's about 3.5 years ago we did all of this testing to get forth to these in total 30 questions, which you're answering. By the way, we're halfway through answering the questions. And when we took them to the different industry workshops, that's when we started to organize the questions. So you can see that this dimension only has 2 questions against it, whilst the business model one, for example, had 5 questions. That shows something about the interest and the intensity of that dimension, but not its importance. So the reason why we retain a dimension with only 2 questions in is because indeed it seems to be an important area, but the questions that have been on the readiness aspects which need to be in place, we deemed to be just those 2 for this dimension. So that's a little bit of the science behind this, but also the reason for you could say the unequal amounts of aspects and questions to each of the dimensions. Okay, so it seems like just over half are with the hands up. Or when a whole room puts its hand up, that's really great. That means that lots of you are ready. So let's go on to the next dimension again.
Yeah, and the next one is use, support, and maintenance. When our products are out there fulfilling the needs they were developed for, we need to, of course, try to ensure that they are there for as long as possible. And this, of course, might not be, of course, for everybody, because actually the design strategy we've been using so far is to make it as short as possible so that we can sell more and more products, right? But this is, of course, changed with a circular economy mindset, where we again try to decouple value creation from resource consumption. So the idea here is how can we, through support and maintenance, extend the lifetime of your products. And in Europe just now, we have the CE action plan, which has a very important part of it called the right to repair. So the idea is that every consumer should be able to repair their products. And this is, again, changing the way companies are developing their products and they are putting their products in the market. One of the big giants of IT did a very important move of that last year. I think it was October, November. Apple decided to launch their self-repair kits, so that you can repair a broken screen in your cell phone or your iPad. And I mean, there's no coincidence there. They're, of course, seeing what to do. But the example that we have here is not a consumer company, but it's actually a capital goods manufacturer from Finland again. So here we have Cranes, which is one of the biggest suppliers of cranes in the world. Their main customers are mining companies that are taking raw materials from the ground so that we can produce them. And for those companies, it's really important to have a 24/7 capital good working, right? For any second that those big machines are not working, it's a huge problem and they are losing lots of money. So looking at that, what Cranes decided to do is to invest more and more into predictive maintenance. So how can we again build upon the IoT and digitalization to keep track of what's going on with our products all the time, so that we can identify even a very small failure very early to avoid that to happen through predictive maintenance. And we see that happening more and more in different types of businesses. And the data that those companies are getting can again be used to develop better products to their customers, but also to understand what are their needs so that they can be fulfilled in a different way. Okay, so let's go to that dimension. We have 3 questions in this one for you. And as usual, when you finish, just raise your hands so that we know you are ready. So if your company is investing in digitalization and trying to understand how to enhance your service through data, one thing to be really aware of is GDPR and who actually owns the data that you are collecting. So this is a really, really critical thing that can make or break a business. And it's really important to understand who have the rights and how to manage them in the best way so that you have a win-win situation without any personal data into it. So it's something to definitely keep in mind. And another interesting, and I guess it's not so much fun with this fact, but we see many companies, I mean, you know, COVID have disrupted many supply chains, especially in the electronics industry. I had to order this new computer that I have here, and it took 6 months for me to get it due to all of the disruptions. And it's not only my computer. Lots of components that are essential for many of the companies here in the Nordics are not arriving. And what they are doing is to try to use components that are taken back from products that are out of use into new products. So we see that this is for sure a circular economy strategy. It's happening now for a different reason, so that we can actually have access to components that are essential for us to continue running our business. So an area that it's interesting to see the development. It's interesting to see it's possible. I guess it's like having workshops like this. 2 years ago, we'd be all together in only one room. Now we know it's possible to be online and to work relatively well, I hope. But the same goes with components that we are taking back from old products and putting into new products as well. Okay. Maybe we can slowly get moving to the next dimension.
Just 3 dimensions left now, and then we're going to take an extended discussion break. So when you've completed this, if you lower your hands again, and we'll move on to the next one. And this one at, say, 10 or 11 o'clock on the clock here on the hexagon is about take back and end of life strategies. And this is basically one of the areas where, as Daniela mentioned in the start, is often what people think of when we talk about circular economy. It's about recycling, right? I started my PhD in 1993 and on eco-design. And all my family said, eco-design, oh, that's recycling milk bottles, isn't it? I come from the UK where we still deliver milk to each other. And even then, people were thinking about it's about recycling. It's all about end of life. It's all about taking stuff back. And it's not all about that, right? It's about everything else that we've been through so far, and the last dimensions too. But it's also about that, and it's about how do we understand the duty, but also the opportunities that we can get from taking products and systems back at the end of we call it the end of use these days, actually. In the terminology is changing from end of life to end of use. And actually, the overarching discussion is about end of waste. How do we end waste altogether? That will be when we get a true circular economy. But here, it's about asking ourselves, how ready are we in our organization, in our company, in terms of take-back programs? And what's really nice and exciting is that there's many really great examples out there of companies who are indeed starting to take a responsibility and understand what the opportunities are, but also what it entails to begin to take back their product end of life. Or you have companies such as this one called Refurb. And I know that this is just one example out of quite a number of similar companies in the Nordic region and in Europe, and in fact in the world in general. But Refurb we really like because they're extremely open, they're very pioneering, and they're very, very much doing this for circularity and sustainability reasons. It's a company based here in Denmark, in the second largest city of Aarhus, just outside the city. Refurb basically is repairing, refurbishing, and reselling IT that we're working on just now, either on your computer, your tablet, your telephone. Those are the three main pieces of IT equipment that they are giving new life to, or second or third or fourth life to. They have two customers. They have the customers that they're receiving the equipment from, which they buy the equipment from, and then they have customers that they're selling the equipment to. And it's not just about buying your old computer from you and reselling it as you would do in a second-hand shop. They actually bring it in, and they say they're basically remanufacturing. It's not quite terminology-wise correct, but they're refurbishing your equipment for you. They take it through. The first thing they do with your computer, we've been there and visited them and seen they call it their manufacturing facility. They take the computer, they hack the BIOS in the computer to see, because they don't have a login to anything, they go and do a diagnostic check on the equipment. If they can see that there's been some faults on the keyboard or on the screen, they'll do an extra test on those. They are recommended or certified suppliers and repair organization for a number of companies like HP and Dell and so forth. So they have all the spare parts available. And they basically make computers, telephones, tablets, and other equipment, which is ready to go onto the market. If you were to go onto their website, I think the refurb.dk works, but they have another website as well. Maybe you can put it in the chat, then I'm not sure. Or you can do, but don't just send it to yourself, like I did before. If you go onto their website, the first thing you're met with is not their mission and their vision and their whole sustainability reason, it's the web shop. And the web shop, you have basically 3 different scales of products. I'm not sure how prominent they are just now, but normally you get the A, which is looks like new, works like new. You get the B, which is works like new, maybe has a couple of scratches on it, and then the C level is WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. It looks scratched and it looks dented, and it is. And they have different price branches and price bands for that. They're managing to process 5,000 pieces of equipment per month, or stopping 5,000 pieces of equipment per month going onto the scrap heap or into the wrong hands. And they're also, as many others will, not just the guys who are selling this, but also many other researchers will confirm that actually second-use electronics are often more reliable than first-use electronics, because you have something called a burnout when something stops working. You also have something called burn-in, which is all what we call the teething problems, or the teenage problems, you call it in Denmark or in Danish, for electronics when it's burning in. And second use products often don't have those burn-in problems anymore. And they get actually a full diagnostic for their second user. So this, we thought or think, is a really nice example of a company really basing their business on circularity and actually being a broker between end of use for one user and making a new use for a new user, and really being the closing of that loop. It's one of the most prominent examples of closing the loop that you can imagine, in fact. And when you go on to this dimension, again, this is the wrong one, I meant just here, but there's just 3 questions. So, and some of you are working out that when we're giving these examples, you can just go in and answer the questions anyway. So the hands go up really quick, and it's nice. There's a race to put your hands up. So just 3 questions left, and then we're almost done. We just have 2 dimensions left after this. And then we're going to take an extended break with a discussion in your breakout rooms.
Yeah, Stefan, you're asking if we have all the fun fact companies. We can send you the examples that we've been given just now and send you some of them. But I think that basically it's we interface with tens and tens and tens of companies throughout the research. I mean, in this project alone, we have 500 companies on board. We haven't systematized them in any way. Some of them are committed to memory. And because we teach together a lot, we remember a lot of them and remind each other a lot of them. But I think just keep coming to our workshops and you'll get some of them, and then just write them down. But we can, if you want some specific examples, just ask and we can of course send them to you. Okay, it seems that a lot of people are raising their hands. So it's time to go on to the next dimension.
Yes, let's do that. And the next one is also a really important one, and it has to do with understanding how ready our market is for circular solutions, but also how ready the legal frameworks are for actually enabling us to become more circular. We were in a DI, the Danish Confederation of Industry event some years ago. It was maybe almost 4 years ago. And we were discussing circular economy implementation in Denmark. And one of the environmental ministers at the time, he came up and said, well, I know that being circular today in Denmark is not legal, but you should do it. Because, I mean, we are still in a linear economy, right? And many of our legal frameworks still have the mindset of a linear economy. If you apply today for any European project, one of the areas that you need to work on is what are the barriers from a legal point of view for implementing circular economy, because they are actively trying to understand how to take down those barriers and actually put incentives so that we can become more circular overall. And that was actually a barrier similar to that one that those guys faced some years ago. So Copenhagen Village was set up by 2 entrepreneurs that wanted to provide affordable housing for students in Copenhagen. Here in Denmark, there's a huge challenge for students to find good places to live, especially in the city center, which are affordable for them. It's usually skyrocket, and they don't really find places that easily. It's a long queue and so forth. All of us looking for houses here are nodding and saying, as you know how it is. And what those guys wanted to do was to understand how to provide that, but not by building some new accommodations that would be like all the others, but actually by having a circular approach to it. Not only in terms of building materials, they do that as well. So you can see here, the first village is actually built upon ship containers that are not in use any longer. So their idea was that the individual areas don't need to be that big for you to have a high quality of life. And they really invested into the common areas where people would actually establish a community and a society around it. And their second idea connected to it was to build those villages, of course, in the city center, whether it be attractive for students to be, in those areas that today are not really occupied yet. So they were maybe old harbors, or they were old industrial areas that were not really being used by the time. And they made the calculations and so forth, and they saw that they would be able to have a feasible business if they did it to stay in those areas for 10 years. So they would rent the area, they would build the villages, and after the 10 years, they would move it to somewhere else, another area. When doing it, they would valorize, oh my God, is that right?
Sounds right.
The area, and at the same time they would bring some more life to those areas that were a little bit neglected in a way. The challenge was it wasn't legal to do it. At the time they start trying to do it, they could only rent those lands for 5 years, and that would really kill their business. That wouldn't be possible. So they're really engaged into active negotiations with the Copenhagen municipality to change the law so that they would be able to establish the villages in there. And they are today building their third village in Copenhagen and planning to expand to the other Nordic countries. So maybe, guys, in the future, they're going to be in your cities as well, with this new way of living and those new accommodations that are more circular by definition. Okay. So we have 5 questions in this dimension, and I'll just get there to you. But in the meantime, you are welcome to start answering them. Is that a question? Raising the hand?
No, I was just ready already.
Yeah. You are so ready. I need your help, Tim, to pronounce the Danish names where the villages are.
Baffen.
Often.
Which is Refshaleøen. And then I don't actually know what it's called. The other village which is just opened is near the locomotive. So Rancheringsbanen.
Yeah.
So it's between the main railway station and Enghave. It's where they used to repair all the trains.
Yeah.
It's like like a lost world down there with the old repair huts. They've just opened a new village there, and then now just working on one in Nørrebro. I'm not sure exactly where.
Where?
In Nørrebro. I don't know.
Is it by the COVID-19 test area?
Let's have a look.
Because the local, like the politicians wanted to use the area just behind all the car sales selling companies. There's like a huge gap next to the Bispebjerg station.
Okay, interesting. So the Nørrebro one isn't listed here. maybe that was a secret. AMAP always
I
coming
saw it
soon.
on Facebook.
It was also on Facebook, so
I think it's close to the Nordbrustation.
could be. So AMAP is also coming. So near Ammerfelde.
Yeah, for the ones that are not from Denmark or in Denmark, these are really central areas in the city. And I mean, it's from the first one, you can see the little mermaid from the back, not from the front.
Yeah, so they're central, but not central. They're sort of,
Exactly.
they're very close to the center, but they've no resources, no resort facilities, infrastructure. Yes, they have facilities, no societal infrastructure. Good. It seems that we're very ready to move on.
Okay, so we're almost there. Now we're in the eye of the storm in the middle, the button right in the center, which is about organization. And like anything or any change in a company, if you don't anchor it within the center of the organization, the way the company actually works, then the likelihood is that as soon as you get one person, the champion, moving out of the company, or you get a management change or what have you, it will for sure have a challenging time in existing. So the idea here is that what actually is the necessity to be aware of in order to get ready to change the way in which our organization functions. And this example comes from a company, Bose, which you may have heard of. It's an American hi-fi company. They make, among other things, these earphones and high-end hi-fi equipment. What I didn't know before we ran a workshop for them a couple of years ago in just outside Boston was that it's established by an MIT graduate originally from India, Mr. Bose, and he made an enormous foundation and has a very, very high interest in sustainability, and it's still one of the few family-owned American large companies at this time. And the reason to bring those on board is that we actually run this type of a workshop with them, but with a lot of their staff members, to help them to try and see. They had a good control of their sustainability activities, and they've been doing their own sustainability maturity exercise within the organization. But what they were seeing was, how does sustainability and circularity actually fit together? Because sometimes they can go hand in hand, and other times they can actually somehow conflict with each other, or at least challenge each other. So they brought us in to see how can we as an organization reconcile our sustainability strategy with our circularity strategy. And by the way, many companies are doing exactly the same just now and meeting the same conflicts and contradictions. So we thought this was a nice example of a company which is really taking it very seriously and actually asking themselves, what will it actually take from an organizational perspective? How do we start to work differently within the company in terms of getting ourselves ready as a whole organization to work with circularity? Are we prepared to open a whole new take-back department? Are we prepared to stop selling products and sell services, even though our business is based upon manufacturing? Are we prepared to make new relationships with other value chain partners we'd never even thought about before? So all of these questions come up in the middle of one here. And here there's just 4 questions to finish off on. And when you finish the 4 questions, you'll see something magic happens in your readiness chart. Let me just get that. At the bottom, when you've completed your 4 questions, you go down, and instead of saying in progress or next, it'll say submit. So the button at the bottom will change to submit. And when you submit it, it will ask you what your expertise areas are. And then you can go in and say, what my expertise, am I an expert in product development? Am I an expert in materials, or what have you? Just answer those questions, and then it will go on and lead you through your readiness. raise your hand when you've come all the way through to answering the 4 questions, submitting, putting your readiness, your expertise areas, and coming back out to the main screen. Very brief.
In a silent workshop so far.
Yeah.
It's time for them to share and speak.
Perfect. Great. It seems that most of you have reached the end of the questions and you're in some new space. It should take you to here, where it's showing your readiness. And maybe if it doesn't, it will take you to your results. And you can see your results in terms of your readiness profile. Does everyone see this in front of them? I can't see people's faces. So maybe are people seeing this profile in front of them?
If you don't see it, then maybe just write in the chat or speak up.
I actually don't remember where it takes you.
Of course, you want to resubmitting it.
You
So
resubmit
maybe
it,
I have to check my.
That's my readiness results. Yeah. And then my readiness profile. Perfect. So basically, if you didn't get to this, let me just turn my head around so that navigate a bit better. If you need to go, so at the top of the screen, you'll see some breadcrumbs here. So wherever you are, you can go to my loop. That brings you to the main part. At any time, then you press my readiness. Then you can go to results. When you get to results, you see 3 options. Unless you're an out of scope organization, then you won't be able to do the external benchmarking. And because we've only done it for 1 business unit, we can't do internal benchmarking because you need to have 2 to benchmark against. So maybe those will be enabled for you, maybe they won't. But the My Readiness profile will bring you to here. And we're going to take a break now. And over that break, what we'd like you to do is to have a look. Just click around. You can't break anything. Click around and see what happens on the profile. We're going to walk through all these different data points on the left-hand side with you a little bit later. But if you click on one of them, to the right-hand side, you'll see the areas and what your score is in the circles. And if you scroll down, it gives you some current status and some recommendations for each of those areas that belong to this one particular dimension. So all the questions or the aspects is giving you something on. You can see for this particular example, it's not looking that ready, right? Because it's very gray. Let's take another example. Let's take I think this one. There we go. Maybe your readiness looks like this. This looks a little bit more fun. Here we can see a high readiness in policy and markets, product and service innovation, manufacturing and value chain, and use support and maintenance, and a lower readiness in other places. Just have a click around. We're going to give an extended break now, and this is where we're going to open the breakout rooms for you to go into. So in a few seconds, we'll go into the breakout rooms. Just for your sake for the break, and maybe what you could do would be to take a screenshot of this next slide, so that when you go out into the breakout rooms, you have this with you. Here's some discussion items that we would propose that you take during the extended break. And actually, we're going to keep the extended break until about 25 minutes past 3. So it's quite a long break. It's a half an hour. Take a coffee, take some fresh air, and then take a long discussion in your own language with the old people in your room. And here's the 5 questions that we think could be interesting. Number 1, what are the most surprising areas in terms of your readiness across the different readiness profiles that you've made? In which of the areas would you focus if you were to choose to increase your readiness first? 3rd question, do you see any trends across the companies that you're discussing within your own country? 4thly, why is it that small to medium-sized enterprises, as Daniela mentioned before, why is it that they're more ready for circular economy than larger companies, do you think? What do you think the reason for that is? And in which cases does circular economy actually conflict with sustainability, as I mentioned just before? That's quite a lot of things to discuss, but it's half an hour. So we'll put a timer on for 15:25, and we'll meet again at 15:25. Okay? Enjoy the break, and looking forward to hearing your feedback. I think Linda's going to open the breakout rooms now, and then you simply, are you doing it so anyone can choose a breakout room?
Yes.
You choose the breakout room that has your country name on. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So unless you want to talk a different language, then you can go to a different country. That's also the part of the cyber world. So see you later.
No, we go now. We go now. I mean, we can take a break. We can take a break, and then
you first go into your breakout rooms, and then you take a break. Then you're away from the main room, and then you can make your own game rules and discuss without having to mute yourself. And then we'll close the rooms at 15:25.
Yeah. Half an hour. Yes, we have.
Yeah, but also for the break and then, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but we need to eat first.
And we will not on the Zoom, so.
Yeah, we need to. I can turn it. I can turn off.
For eating, Said, you're curious.
It's Semla Day in Sweden, so we are going to eat semla.
Sounds lovely.
It's bolle. The fastelavnsbolle.
Yeah, that's really fun.
We also should have some snacks and sandwiches coming in a minute, so.
Yeah, we're all wishing our way to Sweden for a second.
And I'm just gonna assign the remaining ones to their rooms.
Probably time for fika in Sweden just now. isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yes. So,
Yes.
How many people do we have actually?
We are 7.
At home?
There's, oh, sorry, in Denmark or in total?
In Denmark.
In Denmark, we are 7. There's 4 online and then 3 in the room here. Yeah.
Hey Linda, could you please send me again to the breakout room Denmark, because I had to restart the Zoom meeting for the microphone
Yes,
mission from. All right. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Linda, are you staying there?
I can stay in the
Staying there.
main, yeah,
I'll turn the microphone.
then I mute myself.
Yeah.
take a waste question?
Yeah, if you don't want on the Slack marketplace, also have local.
They called me for a second interview.
Yeah.
Resources would be also.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, now we try to just mediate something.
I think I will change the again to my sound.
Yes. Do you want me to turn it on? Or...
What about you? How did you get into this whole community? Why did you sign up?
Well, I mean, I am part of the SPC Student Ambassadors, but it's an organization based in Skylab that promotes sustainability. So ways that the student can get to the knowledge sustainability about SDGs without being just theoretical. So I'm only in that, and I follow the CATALY activities. So that is why I get to know, and I say I'm really engaged to learn more about because I would like to work as a consultant.
Work to do, so
Yes.
About this is but I'm a bit surprised with the small curve, since this is such a hot topic.
Yeah, we do have a few people online as well. For Denmark, and then we're told, I think I counted 40 people.
Oh my God.
Yeah, with all the different partners.
Yeah.
It's just locally here, and unfortunately, you can try to switch it around then to see also the others in Sweden, in Stockholm. So, yeah. I think also it's now sort of getting people on board and having the interest and trying to reach the young professionals for like early.
Yeah, right now I'm trying to build a platform connecting with the graphic supplier with site user. But I want to start to contact with the from a big company, a large company. So user side is focused on the more sustainable design or different studio. So it's fine. It's easy to find a good designer with CEO, but the large company kinds of them more than for outdoors or something like that. Honestly, so contact with right button. Yeah. So I accept this kind of community to help to connect. It can work
And we had also last November we had a big conference here in Copenhagen, on circular economy. And I mean, our mandate is to bring more the youth and young professionals into the daily education. Our future leaders, so we need to bring that knowledge out there. So it's building a community. Right now, I think we're around 200. So do you mind if we maybe sit down on the table so we have also the other people, or you can, stand, but I'm just going to try to loop in the people who are online into the discussion. And hi Lars, Fernando, and Hiroki, great to see you. We have a little bit of a technical challenge here, but I'm trying to make this as easy as possible. So,
all right.
We are here with 3-4 more people. And I don't know if we want to perhaps briefly start with an introduction of actually what is our background, who we are, and then we have this 5 beautiful guiding questions. So perhaps while you are thinking of your introduction, and I will start with the introduction, you could select one of the questions, and following your personal introduction, you can reflect on one of the questions. And I'm super happy to run through them again. Just need to see it on my laptop. So we have, what are the most surprising areas in terms of your readiness? In which areas would you focus to increase your readiness first? Do you see any trends across the companies in your country? Why are SMEs more ready for circular economy than larger companies? And in which the cases does circular economy conflict with sustainability? So perhaps we can really focus in this discussion on the first 3 ones, on the top ones, on a more like company personal reflection. And to give you some time, I'm Linda. I'm here at DTU Skylab, which is the hub for innovation and entrepreneurship at a technical university, the project manager of Catalyst, and focusing on the projects within circular economy. And the main ambition for the Catalyst project, and why we actually engaged with the project, is to ensure that the students get the right tools and methods and incorporate this circular thinking at a very early stage, and to make this youth and young professionals change agents. So to be going out there, if it is working in a company as you do, or if it's actually students working on a project, that they incorporate this thinking on the way. And I think working with a lot of the companies now, we bring a lot of cases into courses. I can observe that a lot is actually looking at the end of the supply chain and exploring how can they take back, how they can incorporate these take back systems to increase value there. Yeah, that was a reflection from my side. And I don't know, Lars, do you want to start because you're online, and then we bring it back to the room?
Sure. Yeah, so my name is Lars, and I'm an industrial designer working with Viessmann since a little bit over a year. I don't know if Viessmann is very present in the Nordic countries, but we are like one of the large German heating and climate solutions manufacturers. 13,000 employees globally. And we are pushing this topic of sustainable product development very much from our small industrial design department at the moment. And I think for us, so there's as one trend which I see across the business, but many companies in our in Germany, I think, is at the moment that everyone is trying to switch to more sustainable materials, trying to leave all the rest in place, because then it's a relatively small change. And just we talked last year with the head of our polymer buying department, and he said that by now the price for recycled plastic is higher than virgin plastic, because all the companies are trying to buy recycled plastic material. So that's kind of crazy what is happening right there at the moment. And then honestly, what's a big challenge for me, or what's surprising, that we don't have any like end of life take back options in place at all, because our products, so if you buy a gas heater or something, then it's lasting for 20-25 years, and then after this it's just up to the installers to take out the appliances from the customers' homes and deal with them. So there's nothing from our side. Yeah, that's it maybe for the first round from my side.
Great. Thank you so much for the reflection and super interesting insights. And I hope that also with the Catalyst, maybe we can help you and connect you to some relevant students to actually explore some inspiring innovative solutions for take-back system, but more to that later when I present actually the project in more detail. So yeah, thank you so much, Lars. In the room, who wants to go? Maybe Jacob.
Yeah, of course. Hello, my name is Jacob. I'm from. I currently used to go here. I'm a student from TTU. Originally, I work now at the Danish Technological Institute, where I work in the department for heat pump and refrigeration. So related to Lars in the heating industry. And we engage a lot with SMEs, and we see these trends in terms of circular economy and all of the things that comes from the European Union being increasingly relevant. And we also work a lot with the current legislative form in terms of energy efficiency, the eco-design, energy labeling schemes related to energy uses in products, and how these coexist and sometimes collide is very interesting for us. And we see a lot of companies interested in sustainability, but also interested in how to go about it. And then I saw this on a more structured way of getting into it and having some sort of roadmap and framework for approaching it, and breaking it down into bits and pieces that you can actually handle. That was my interest in this. So we don't do manufacturing, but we help. We do a lot of research and development projects, and also commercial products where we do product development and testing and stuff like that. So yeah, and of course we have also people doing end-of-life material goods and stuff like that. It's a big company, the Technological Institute. We usually say we have 1,000 experts, and so it covers most of the Danish industry.
Yeah. Great. Thanks a lot, and thank you for the interesting insights. Do you want to go next? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Hiroki. Now I'm a master student in DTU, Technology Entrepreneurship. But previously I have worked for 6-7 years in Japanese manufacturer, and I designed the product which for the oil refinery or plant or these kinds of B2B markets, the product for the B2B market. And then now I try to build my own startup project. Then I try to mediate the trading with the wasted plastic suppliers with users. Then we identify the supply chain issues between the small size companies. Then almost the ambitious designers wasting a lot of time, most of their development time to securing their proper material. So we try to make the digital platform to connect between the wasted plastic suppliers and the users. Honestly, I'm now struggling with finding good suppliers now. So yeah, Jacob support is super helpful for me now. But I try to assess based on my previous company. Then our previous company is also like, its most important thing is to keep reliability on this product. And sometimes it is tough to change to more sustainable, circular, like using the wasted or recycled material, because sometimes it's they have some reliable issues or quality, cost, whatever. So yeah, and also I feel it is difficult to rebuild the supply chain network in the large company. So they are optimized supply chain already based on the linear economy perspective. Yeah, that's my thing. Yeah, that's it.
Oh, thank you so much. And there are also two super interesting comments and reflections. I mean, that's also something they have pointed out throughout the way. So thank you so much. Would you like to go next, Martin?
Yeah. First a question, can I borrow power supply? Because
Of course.
my laptop is about to give up. Yeah, super. Thanks a lot. So, my background is in mechanical engineering and business administration. I've always been interested in cradle-to-cradle concepts, like donut economy, co-creation. So I've set up cases for this in study groups. Then later, I also had my own company producing products that provide safe drinking water in African communities. So I've had experience with hardware, and also this was more like we sold the product, but you want to make it last as long as possible. So there was this part of circularity in there. Right now, I'm starting my own company again, and I'm trying to figure out what it will exactly be. But I know one thing for sure, that it's chief focus on circular economy, and I think initially advising companies on how to transform their business models to become more sustainable, more circular, and maybe at a later point combining it with some service or even starting your own product. But in the course of figuring out what it is.
And now, from like running through the assessment, do you have any interesting, surprising element maybe, or what was it, something you believe should be more focus on? I don't know if you have a point to reflect on that.
I think the most surprising is that you have to see the full scale of it, because I had some ideas in mind. For instance, I was talking with someone who is he's from a demolition company that recently uses the wood from these buildings as new window frames. There's smart processes, pressure welding process, and things like that, but it can really make it a good material that can be just used for new buildings. When you go through this whole circle, then you also see that, okay, wait, they might have not thought about this whole data part of the whole value chain. While they're very strong here, there's much improvement on the other side. So really, where I have these examples in mind, like they're really good, but there's still some gaps. That's what I really like about this one.
Absolutely, and I think that is what Tim and Daniela are also really good at, is like supporting that system thinking. And I think that is especially super relevant for the circular economy. So to not only look, let's say, at the product or look at your business model, but see how it impacts each other. So super interesting reflection. Thank you. Do we have Fernando or Hiroki, sorry if I pronounce your name wrong, online that would like to present or share? Because I don't. Sorry. Then actually, I'm sorry, I missed you. But then, yeah, Fernando, are you online? Maybe on a too long break. Sorry. I'm just trying to see if there is more Danish people out in. No, but all of them have been assigned, so that should be fine. Then we were missing 2 falling out on the way. Yeah, any other reflections that you wanted to share? I don't know, Lars, you also mentioned that in the beginning. You just pointed out one free for. Oh, sorry, I forgot you. No, okay, let's take Jesus first and then.
Okay. Yeah, well, I'm Jesus. I am also a student graduated here at TTU, focusing construction management and sustainability. So I get into the circular economy to become a knowledge sustainability consultant. So how to help mainly construction companies into the way that they can implement circular economy, more sustainability methods. So that is a little bit like why I also went to CATALY to get to access to knowledge that I haven't been able to get through my studies. Also the network, get to meet people, what they do, how they work in their company.
Did you participate in the? Did you take the oral B case?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have any reflections or any surprising elements or some where you believe that there should be an increase?
In circular economy?
No, like now from assessing of the Ready to Loop platform.
Yes, I mean, when I took that workshop, it was really good because the books that they were using, it was really helpful to understand basic things. And then using now this platform, what I see is this gives you a lot of accessibility to really understand like that company. I have been doing with this one the accessibility to R&D through the knowledge that I got through this workshop because I really look for a little bit more in the company and so on. So yeah, and here now I can see when I have been checking, okay, yeah, that's true. Start to explain to you more specific things now in order to be able to continue that process. So
yeah. And any surprising facts or?
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, probably when I take it I read it slowly at home tomorrow, it will probably appear more facts. Now things like quickly answer these questions, go there. So there is not really much time to my brain to think.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Yeah. So Fernando doesn't seem to be online with us.
I'm here. I'm here.
Okay.
Yeah,
you want to...
I was just taking like a deeper look at the results. Well, I have a small furniture factory in Chile. We're working with recycled materials, mostly wood from demolitions. Yeah, from the analysis, my score is pretty high in manufacturing and value chain because we are already working with these materials and we have some agreements with demolition companies. But we're lacking a lot in the other fields, like yeah, for instance, technology and data, and really all the rest. Like,
yeah,
it's super cool tool.
Yeah, thank you for sharing this. Was there any surprising facts when you went through the analysis of your company on the platform?
I think mostly the opportunities that we have, and also the fact that it being a small company, then we can apply change more easily, more fluid. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, but I think that is also reflecting to, I think, the fifth or fourth question that was actually out in the plenum discussion. And unfortunately, I don't see them at the moment. But that is super fine because we took a first round of introduction, looking more at the trends and some of the surprising facts. Exactly. Should we close the? Okay, perfect. Then
think about on the way back into.
Exactly. So maybe if you reflect on the last two questions while we are going back into the main section, and then we could take it afterwards when we're in the networking round. But thank you for the interest and discussion here.
Hearing me okay? Any other countries? So are you hearing me, everybody? Yes, great. Welcome back. I hope you had a nice break and a good breakout discussion. In order to steer our feedback, we have a Menti. And even though you've been discussing country by country, we would propose that you just spend 30 seconds going either on your computer or your phone to menti.com and then use the code 12085363 to go in. And we have basically 5 questions around the 5 discussion points. And to make it a little bit more effective than asking country by country, because then we'd be here until 5 or 6 o'clock tonight. We'll just choose a couple of the discussion points that come up. So the first one of the most surprising areas in terms of your readiness that you saw or discussed, either your own or what you discussed generally in your country. We'll just let that go for a couple of minutes or a few more seconds, and then we'll take it.
Tim, do you want us to answer like as one united country, or do you want us to do individual companies within Iceland?
You can decide, Kjartan, whichever you prefer. What I'm going to do is take the interesting ones and ask you to say a few more words and open your mind. So you can either do it as a whole country or as a particular company. You decide.
Yes.
So here we see that only one strength somebody wrote very quickly. That was the surprising thing that one of you wrote. And we'll go through the details of how the strengths and gaps actually are in the second or two. Take back an end of life strategy. Was that because it was a strength or because it was a gap? Would anyone like to put a few words to that one? Maybe that's typing somewhere. Then technology and data. Not ready on the data aspect. Someone's writing. No end of life take back option in place. Not ready on technology and data. Okay, so we start to see a trend now that technology and data is an area where you seem to be least ready. High rate of connectivity of our products for failure prevention, energy management, and distribution. Does anybody want to put a few words to what the most surprising areas were? Just open your mic if you'd like to. And if not, we have a very, very quick discussion. Organizational readiness, take back and end of life has a lot of potential. Yeah. Okay, so I think we're seeing two trends here at least. One is technology and data, and the other one is take back and end of life. And the nice thing is that when you say has a lot of potential, it means to say that your readiness could improve there. About Oral B, there was so much missing, even they've written so much about sustainability and maybe nonsense, you're saying. So yeah, we need to be careful what we write about sustainability and circularity if we're not doing it. But maybe to be fair on them, we didn't have that much deep data on them, so don't go and judge them by the merits of this workshop alone. So, okay, let's go on to the next question in the Menti. Again, same Menti. The next one is, in which areas would you focus to increase your readiness first? And this is this choosing how many, Daniela?
Yeah, you just put the priority.
You rank them in priority order. Yeah.
How much should you focus on each one of them?
And further to the right, the more you prioritize. So on the basis of 3 responses, take back and introduce. Oh, it was winning. It's like the horses in activity, isn't it? The one win, and the one that's going over a hill. Oh, the number 7 is going to win. So take back end of life, strategy, business model innovation, manufacturing value chain, and then organization starts to get bigger. Technology and data get bigger. So it reflects, I think, some of the comments you had on the previous one about take back and end of use, technology and data, and then we have manufacturing and value chain as the next one, and after that, strategy and business model innovation and organization. If we'd have done this workshop 2 or 3 years ago, I can almost guarantee you that the picture would look somewhat different. It would be about strategy and business model, and it would be about market opportunities, the areas where you focus. So I think even though this is the first time you've seen this readiness assessment, we've done this type of a ranking before, we're seeing a shift in the pattern, because we have a shift in our, you would say, in our mindset about what we need to have in order and have in place from a readiness perspective. So quite interesting there. Okay, let's move on to the next one. What do you say in terms of what trends across the companies in your country? So in the discussions you had, did you see anything that were trends there? over and above technology and data and the end of use parts. Other trends that areas where you think it could be an improvement on the readiness, or you're doing really well in your country, or there's a common area of focus. Do that in a minute or two. Interesting, the first three out of the 4 comments are about materials recycling or upcycling. Another one there is for the use of sustainable material versus virgin material. Use of recycled material, especially in plastics. Large focus on recycled material upcycling. And then one on invest in new tech for the use and end of life, new business models like lease and resell, so it's the business model aspects. All companies focusing on how to get more or a completely circular business. Another one on sustainable material use. Digital enabling services, apps for recycling and so on. Yeah, we're seeing, I mean, if you imagine some of the examples we've been showing you today as well, imagine 10 years ago, most of those examples would not be possible because they all rely and depend upon data and IT and apps and data assessment and so forth, and availability of products and so forth. So IT and digitalization really has a big part to play, reducing the single use. Okay. And then this can be the last one, we just fill the whole screen, unless somebody's still typing. More success from those who focus on collaboration. Yeah, so those, and that's a nice segue to the final part of the Saturday, actually, about more success for those who focus on collaboration. We're going to tell you about what the Ready to Loop project actually is working on just now. Carbon reporting and minimization, and integrating circular economy, the lack of action versus talking. Yeah, so how are we doing in terms of carbon reporting and how circular economy fits there? We're seeing a big challenge there between carbon reporting and circularity because we don't always get the credits for our circularity initiatives we're seeing in industry as well. So there's a piece of work to be done there to iron that out. And then understanding a holistic approach. Okay, thanks for that. Let's move on to the second to the last question. Why are SMEs more ready for circular economy than larger companies, do you think? So we gave you that fact before, and we'll share some few details and a bit of data with you just before we close. Why do you think SMEs are more ready for circularity than other companies, larger companies? Are they? Somebody asked. Yes. According to the data we collected. So they are, in terms of the 500 companies, 500 plus companies we have on the platform. So you could say in some ways they're self-selecting because they found the way to the project, they found the way to the platform, and they actually completed their readiness assessment. And among those, the data are showing that they're far more ready than larger companies to transition. Easier organizations and faster change, that's one of the reasons, yeah. They're more agile, yes. More easy to adopt a strategy, business model. So they basically, a lot of the smaller companies, indeed, that we see in the platform are very self-selecting because they're born out of a circular initiative. So in that way, there's quite a bias, especially when you compare to companies which have been in the business for 100 years and have a big legacy market, lots of products on the market, manufacturing facilities. It's much more difficult for them to shift. Yes, and often no global logistics supply chains required. There's all of the infrastructure and the overhead which is required. Shorter journeys to take decisions, willingness to collaborate, And then some of them are not sure if they are, but if so, because they're new and born circular, the answer we just discussed. Complexity and larger ones, simpler decision making, SMEs, lots of nice answers here. Simple processes, yeah. Less capital invested in a linear economy, yeah. So it's all of those things that we discussed there. So there is a role and an opportunity for smaller companies to actually make a difference and to help that circular transition. I can see Torstein, you've got your hand up. Would you like to say something?
It was me who asked, are they? Because we have slightly different findings. For example, that smaller companies maybe don't have the same resources to like their own heads of sustainability, etc., and are very maybe production focused, and that maybe the correlation between size maybe is one factor that is we don't see it as strongly as maybe you do. So I was a bit surprised to what you wrote and the research that we.
Where are you from? Just to understand where you're saying we. I can't see where your affiliation is. Where are you from?
I am from the Mid Norway Chamber of Commerce and Industry.
Right. Okay.
And there's been research done in our region showing that the larger companies have more focus on well, that's for sustainability, but you know it's so I was a little bit surprised with that.
We can share the data with you, and we can point you to one of the or a couple of the webinars where we go deeper into the data, so you can have a look to see what are the aspects that they are more ready on. And
this is based on their platform, right? So
it's only based on platform. So in that way, it's self-selecting for sure. Yeah. But we can share that data with you later. I'd love to see the findings from the studies you've done as well. They're very nice. Yeah.
Do you have any? Is there any distinction or like? I was wondering whether small companies are more into circularity and mid-sized companies, because it's called SMBs. So I would suspect that small companies are born into this, and some mid-sized companies are, as Torstein saying, being focused on manufacturing and keeping they have a longer history. And then, do you have any? In terms of employees or something?
Yeah, so we see that these small companies are more ready. If you look across the 16 sectors that we have in the database. Of course, if you look into specific sectors individually, the picture is different. And sometimes the medium companies are the ones that are more ready. Some others are the micro companies, like up to 10 employees. And some other sectors, they are indeed the large companies. So this small one, it's an average for all the sectors together, but of course there's a different sector by sector. And if you look into the webinars that Tim just mentioned, you can see there for the different sectors how the readiness is changing as well.
Actually, I had this question and now it's fitting perhaps perfectly. Is there any ones where you say they are leading in the transition, looking at the sectors? Is it more the mobility, fashion? We've seen a lot of different sectors that were pointed out, so I was just curious. And now you're also saying there's a change in trend, so maybe is there also some industry that's overtaking? It started late.
There is, and we just had it in the workshop, in the the webinar to KTH last week. I think it was machinery. The sector with the highest readiness across all the 16. But again, if you look into, I'm just doing an advertisement for your webinar, Said. But if you watch that webinar, then you can see there as well what are the sectors with the highest readiness.
Very good. Let's go on to the final question, which was about sustainability and circularity. In which cases does circular economy actually conflict with sustainability? Right. This is the last question before we go on to wrap up.
Okay, so energy management processing for circularity. Yeah, so one of the big discussions here in Denmark was we've been transitioning in the municipal waste to collecting all different types of fractions. Is it actually worth it to collect plastic, and especially soft plastic, for circularity? When does it stop being a good idea? How many kilometers do you need to drive the truck before it really is a bad idea? And of course, we need to get these things started, but sometimes circularity can be, from a straight energy perspective, a bad idea. We need to know exactly where to put our logistics. When the circular option emits more CO2 than the linear option, yeah, same thing. When circular products shorten the lifetime or the durability of a product, yeah, so we have actually a hierarchy of different circularity strategies. And those of you who have been into other of our presentations and workshops, also here in Catalyst, you have seen our circular strategy scanner. There's a prioritization there, and we should make sure that we do things in the right order so that we don't skip to the straight circulation if we can actually prolong the product's lifetime, if that is the appropriate thing to do for that particular product. When new circular products are introduced, instead of introducing recycled circular products, yeah, so all this about replacement and bringing new things into the mix is a tricky one. Take back processes not fulfilling quality criteria compared to virgin materials, and higher environmental costs, also higher costs in total. That's also a balance there in terms of when is it the right thing to do. Use of more renewable or recycled raw materials is encouraged, but sometimes they're less effective for making long-lasting products. Yeah, and the more recycled we use as well, the weaker we make products in some certain circumstances. So where should we use recycled materials in our products? Should it be high-performing products and product components? Then maybe we should think twice about the circularity levels there, or from a quality and a robustness perspective. Incineration gets better results to CO2 to reduce CO2 emissions. Currently, in certain circumstances, it does. And again, this transition is tricky because we need to believe and to invest in the transition and calculate along the way and make bold decisions sometimes. And then tension between long-termness and short-term perspective in terms of economic viability. Yeah, and also not just economic, but also environmental viability, as we were talking about with economies of scale, also fits to environmental sustainability sometimes, and where we actually invest in new infrastructure and how that actually starts to look. So thank you for those comments. I know it would have been much nicer with lots of real raised hands in a room and a dialogue, but this was if not an efficient and effective way, let's say, of doing it. So thanks for that. And we'll store these discussions and send them to you after the workshop as well. Good. Let me just share now, and so we finish off the workshop. Good. So thanks for the discussion. What we'd like to do now is just very, very briefly show you the next steps, what they will be if you were to continue this, and also show you where the project is going at the moment from here from a actual project development aspect, perspective. So first of all, we walk through, and you've been walking yourselves through the different areas here of the readiness assessment. We're looking at the grey and green. Just to tell you a little bit about the data here. So if we're trying to zoom in, yeah, there we go. On the, are you seeing my screen, by the way?
Yeah.
You are, great. So basically, here we can see that the number of assessments on this particular example is 2. The agreement, that's basically looking at the standard deviation between the answers. So here we're working out how much in agreement are these 2 respondents. That's the standard deviation. The skill coverage is the bit that where when you submitted your assessment, it's asking you what are your expertise areas. And you can see that these 2 people are very skilled because we're covering 75% of the skills that we've asked about. So you can see this is just an example we're showing here, but the idea here is to say that these 3 elements, the amount of assessments, the more you get, the more agreements and the more skill coverage are the ones to look out for. And then the robustness of this assessment is a product of these 3. So that's how we're working this out behind it. This has a low robustness. You can't really trust the results of this. And the idea here is that then you should go and invite again and again and again to your colleagues and to have more assessments, to get more skill coverage. And if the agreement is still low, then you've got a problem, or then you've at least got some areas where you can look and see where is the agreement level low here and how do we increase it by having discussions around the different dimensions. So that's how we're working that out. This overall readiness score is in itself not interesting because we're asking lots of different questions. All those 30 aspects we've asked you about is they each have their own importance, but it gives us some form of a proxy to show the scores. And then when you're looking at the benchmarking, I can show that on the next slide. You can either do an internal benchmarking on your results. Let me show you that again. So you go to internal or external benchmarking. If you're a company that has many different departments, you can go and benchmark yourself across departments or business units. And here we can see it gives you a list of where this business unit or this department has a higher readiness than the other. And it gives you a list of different readiness recommendations. And by the way, you can download those recommendations on the fly. There's a button you'll see to download a PDF. That PDF makes the recommendations for exactly that readiness assessment you just carried out so that you can take and work on those recommendations. And then over here, you can do, if you're a company which is in scope, that means you're a manufacturing company, you have the opportunity to do an external benchmark. As I mentioned at the start, the external benchmark is if there's more than 5 companies with the same characteristics as yours, then it will allow you to benchmark. As a point of departure, it lets you benchmark against all the companies we have in the database. Over here, you can press the magnifying glass and it will unfold some filters, 4 filters. One, in terms of what type of market, is it B2B, business to business, business to consumer, or business to government. And that's where when you go in, you say what type of a company that you see yourselves as being the most prominent of. The size of the company, so small, medium size, or large. The geography, which country you belong to. And then the overall industry sector. We have 14 overall industry types. Behind the data, what we do is we go into every single company that logs in, and we put a more granular industry code. We use the OECD codes. It's a 6-digit code, so that we can go even deeper into the data and say it's not just a manufacturer of electronics, but it's actually a manufacturer of electronic components for the automotive industry, for example. And they're really nicely and detailed look at the data to see how ready we are. But this part of it gives you a nice benchmark for you as a company to see how are we doing in comparison to whatever benchmark we have out there in the platform. And again, these are, you could say, self-selected assessments. We're doing lots of filtering so we keep the data quality high. But the more data we get in here, the more reliable the assessments and the results become as well. We'll talk about that in a minute. Briefly over to Daniela about some of the strengths and the gaps that we're observing so far in the platform.
Yeah, so this is some of the data that we would like to share with you more fun facts for you. So strengths, about 47% of the companies, they are allocating resources for circular economy implementation. If you look into product and service innovation, more than 55% of them are designing products for extended lifetime. If you look into operations, about 50% of the companies are sourcing more circular materials for manufacturing. And we could actually see that as well from your comments into the Menti. So material circularity seems to be a really important and hot topic. If you look into market and policy, about 46% of the companies are developing new markets for second-hand products. And finally, if you look into support and maintenance, about 50% of the companies are providing repair services during the use. Again, probably connected to the right to repair directive as well. Now, if we look into the gaps, what are the areas that the companies have the biggest challenge today, and they are still trying to understand the potential, or they have not yet started? 76% of them do not know how to get new revenue streams from circular solutions. More than 70% of them still have challenges in developing knowledge and skills for circular economy internally in the organization. More than 60% of them are not yet engaging in industrial symbiosis practices. More than 70% of them do not really know how to use technology for extending the use phase of the products. More than 80% are not yet establishing themselves, sharing platforms. And finally, more than 65% of the companies are taking the products back, but they actually do not know what to do with those products in terms of disassembly and remanufacturing. Some additional data for you to think about and to try to relate to your own company, but also to your country in trying to understand what are the areas that we have the biggest opportunity for increasing, but also where we need to provide conditions and incentives. Very, very quickly, right now you are looking at the mirror and you are seeing how beautiful or how not that beautiful you are in terms of circular economy implementation. But this is only the first step. Then it's of course really important to define the direction and to see what areas you want to focus on. And if you continue working in the platform, you're going to be the My Transition path, where you can prioritize different dimensions in terms of importance, but also timing. When should they be implemented? And on the basis of that, select a couple for you to focus in more details. And then once you've done it, then you can move forward and implement the recommendations proposed in the platform, but also have a very effective way in navigating these plus 100 tools that we have in the platform. They are basically filtered for you on the basis of your readiness profile and also on the basis of your readiness. So your job becomes much more easier in that way. And then after that is, of course, the implementation of the driven initiatives. And later on, a new evaluation of your readiness so that you can understand how you evolved over time, but also where to focus next as the next big strategic area.
I know I have 30 seconds left to complete the afternoon this afternoon. And what I'd like to tell you about is where we are with the project behind this. So what you've basically been working on this afternoon is a platform that was called the Match platform. And that was a project that was created over the last 4 years. And Match stood for Making the Transition to Circular Economy. And the game is to find out where the H actually belongs in Match. But it actually means matchmaking as well. So it's a silent H. And what we've done is to build that into the new platform and a new project now called Readiness, which we're running for the next 4 years. If you want to read more or see more about both the match project and the data, which we were talking about just before, about the readiness of the SMEs and so forth, then you can look. We have a series of webinars. We have 9 webinars introducing to the project, and then each of the dimensions you've just been working on, and there's one down here as well, you can see those. But also we'll talk about the Ready to Loop project from a launch perspective, and just very, very briefly about why what's different on Ready to Loop. What we saw was that the companies we have in the value chain, we're seeing that over 500 of them are seeing the need to transition to circular economy, but only 25% of those in the platform have actually started to even think about collaborating across the value chain, let alone are actually really good at doing the collaboration across the value chain. So what we're doing here now is that what you've been working on this afternoon is the manufacturing part of this. So we've augmented our logo here to say that we need to understand the raw materials. We need to understand the component manufacturer. Of course, we need to keep understanding the platform you've just been working on this afternoon, manufacturers, viewpoint. We need to understand logistics. We need to understand the retailer perspective, the consumer, end user perspective, and then what we used to call scrap dealers or recycling companies, now called value recovery companies perspective as well, in order to close the circle. And in fact, we need all of these different stakeholders in order to be able to ensure a circular economy. So this is the project now that we're working on, is to augment match by a factor 7, in fact, and build these new layers, which we're just working on at the moment. The main stakeholders, the Danish Industry Foundation has funded this project, and DTU is the main partner still. And this time we've got 2 consultancy companies, Vegan Moore and Hamburg, 2 Danish companies, who in Denmark are doing the accelerator projects together with us. And we've promised 84 accelerator projects as examples which are going to be made available, publicly available as case companies. We have 10 in the Ready to Loop platform just now, and we'll be augmenting that with another 84. And then we have a very strong steering group behind us through the Manufacturing Academy of Denmark, called MADE, through the Danish Business Authority, and also the Confederation of Danish Industry. So this is what we're doing for Denmark for the next 4 years. At the same time, we've been contacted by so many different countries interested in the MATCH platform, and we've also promised the Industry Foundation, our funder, that we're going to be making this available to other countries. And also it should be you could say, a self-sustaining activity after the project's completed. So if there's any interest in translating it to different languages as well and bringing it to your countries, you're more than welcome to reach out to us. We have actually a business developer working with us on that part of it. In terms of where we're going, and this is almost the last slide, Match, the platform you just worked upon, is what we have, and that's what you've been trying out. This year we're working on, we will launch raw materials and component manufacturers as 2 new layers, and we've just finished the enormous literature review for the raw materials. We've gone through the experts evaluation of it, and now later this month we're going to the industry workshops. Later on this year, this autumn, we go to component manufacturers and do that perspective. Next year we take logistics companies and retailers, and in 24 we'll launch the consumers and value recovery organizations. So that's basically just to show you that the platform will expand in those different dimensions. And just to keep your eye on the project, some of you may have come from companies which fit better to one of these value chain stages. Some of you may be interested in looking and following what are actually the readiness dimensions and aspects which are important to consider for the other value chain stages there. So with that, we'd like to thank you for your participation here, and hand over to you, Linda, because you need to tell us as well what else we can get from the Catalyst project. I'm sorry we're a little bit over time on this part.
That is fantastic. I was actually thinking, because I also prepared a small presentation, if we just stop sharing and then I can take over from here. And I think first of all, a big physical and virtual applause to both Tim and Daniela for going through within these like 3 hours, a super interesting and inspiring workshop. No matter how often now I have followed these classes, webinars, or talks, it's always a new element and dynamic dimension that I can learn from. Just to look what we're gonna have ahead of us in the next 10-15 minutes. It's actually a brief introduction into Catalyst. I will start with a general introduction, and then the beauty of Catalyst is that we have our representatives in each of the countries. So in Iceland, we have EFLA Consultancy. I see Kjartan and Lara there in the room. In KTH, we have Sayed and Malvina. And in Finland, we have Floris at the Alto Design Factory. In Norway, we have Ragnhild at NTNU. And did I miss someone? I don't think so. It's me here in Denmark. And I hope that during the networking part, you then actually have also time to discuss some of the opportunities that are part of the Catalyst. Let me share my screen and start the presentation. And very briefly, the Catalyst project was actually funded in 2020 in December between the 5 partners that I have just mentioned. And the aim is to establish youth change makers as catalysts for transition to a sustainable circular economy. And as Tim and Daniela have pointed out, the platform actually identified that 71% lack the knowledge about circular economy. So that is actually one of the aims of the Catalyst to bring these methods and tools and to incorporate the circular thinking into young professionals and also into the student courses at the universities, and through enablers like the Masterclass or webinars, bring that out and support the companies and the industries across the Nordics to transition to a more circular, sustainable business. We are funded by Nordic Innovation, so it's an umbrella organization that actually also has the similar mandate as Catalyst. You can see here a little bit more of what our mantra is. So we're aiming to connect students and young professionals to established companies to accelerate their transition. And we actually have 4 pillars doing this. So I will come back to them into a second. But before, very briefly, we've heard a lot today about what circular economy is, what the different areas are, and Catalyst is in particular looking and taking the foundation from another research project that Tim and Daniela are part of, the Circuit project, where we're looking into readiness and opportunity mapping, business model creation, servitization, circular product and eco-design enhancement by digitalization, and closing the loop strategy. So actually the 8 dimensions that were just presented now by the Ready to Loop platform. And by bringing together the student communities, the young professional change agents, but also the professors and their research approaches and best practices from research, we hope we can support this movement and support the industries in making that transition. And it's fantastic to see so many of you here today for this webinar, because we hope that we can support you in actually establishing a journey and bringing forward some of the gaps maybe that you have identified, and connect you to the right student groups, or bring another masterclass or workshop to your company. So as I've said, we have these 4 pillars that are the main focus of Catalyst. And the first one, as an overarching one, is accelerating Nordic companies' transition. What we do there, we bring in cases from industry and connect them to the students, either in form of a master thesis or in form of a course. And one example from Denmark I can give you, this year we have 130 students working with an industry case from Novo Nordisk, that is a big pharmaceutical company here in Denmark, but also in the Nordics, developing insulin pens, and a Merck group, that is a German pharmaceutical company working with fertility pens. And what the students actually do, in one of the courses, they look at a very holistic supply chain and how they can create a circular business, how they can create and have innovative ideas to drive this take back and looping back strategies. And in another course, we have a bunch of students looking at what products can be created out of the recycled material. So at the moment, Novo Nordisk and Merck have this pilot program where they sort of collect the used pens and bring them back to the users. And that is just a fantastic opportunity for companies to have access to some talented students and get inspired by not just 2 cases, but actually 50 cases from the students. And what we do here, we try to every semester engage different courses and different challenges. The second pillar is creating impact for minds of tomorrow. And this is exactly what we've done here today, an example of running a masterclass. We do have also train the trainer sessions that we ran last year, where we used 2 of the main tools of this Catalyst project and taught some of our students and young professionals how you use them. So the Ready to Loop tool is one of the method and toolboxes we have in Catalyst, but there's also, as I mentioned, the Circuit project. And from KTH, we have 2 other tools focusing on circularity calculation. And all of these webinars and masterclasses and train the trainer sessions are actually online. So if you're curious, you can check out our YouTube channel and see them as well. And then the third pillar is, how do we actually mobilize a change community across the Nordics? That was one of the main questions we tried to ask by bringing together the consortium of 5 partners. And we have hosted a few online and webinars and also networking events. And in November, we had the Nordic Circular Summit as a kickoff of actually creating this Nordic change community. And as part of the project, we have an online platform. I will put the link in the chat in a second. That is the Nordic Circular Arena, which is a joint project by our funding institution, Nordic Circular Innovation and Nordic Circular Hotspot, which is an umbrella organization of a lot of expert companies within the circular economy. And what we try to do on the Nordic Circular Arena, and in particular the Catalyst group, is to get a platform, because we have identified that there is no one platform in the Nordics that actually brings together the change agents and especially the youth. And we have different promotions about events. The webinars and talks are going on as part of the Catalyst, but we also hope to make a matchmaking between you as a student and you as a company. And we do have interesting cases from our former companies uploaded, so you can have a look at these ones as well on an inspiration. And we do have, on top of this, a forum where you can just discuss in a very informal way, not only with your peers here in Denmark, but actually get inspired by the researchers and young professionals and experts across. So lastly, we do have the 4th pillar, looking at industry and research collaboration. So how to bring the expert knowledge from the companies and connect them to active research groups across the Nordics that are at the partnering universities. And as a first step, we have the Circular Economy Readiness Assessment. You have all done this, and I hope you're gonna go out with a lot of interesting ideas and a lot of interesting projects where perhaps Catalyst can actually help you being an enabler in starting this journey and bringing you the right researchers and students on board. That is it from now from my side. I don't know if there's general questions to Catalyst, but also to the presentation that Tim and Daniela did. So I think I would just open the floor now and say thank you very much again for all of you joining online, physically, wherever you are. And also thanks again to Tim and Daniela for this fantastic presentation.